On the 10th of June 2009, on page 3 of a Something Awful forum thread titled Create Paranormal Images, a user named Victor Surge, later revealed to be Eric Knudsen, posted 2 black and white photographs of children. In the background of these otherwise ordinary images lurked a tall, unnaturally thin figure in a black suit with impossibly elongated arms and a blank, featureless face. The caption beneath one photo read, "He is often seen with tentacle-like appendages and has been linked to the disappearance of countless children." With those simple images and that sparse text, Slender Man was born. Welcome to Vanishing Threads, where we explore the mysterious corners of our digital world. Today, we examine how a simple Photoshop contest entry transformed into one of the internet's most well-known myths, a faceless figure that transcended the boundaries of online forums to become a cultural phenomenon and, tragically, inspire real-world acts of aggression. This is the story of Slender Man. What distinguished Slender Man from countless other internet creations was how perfectly it embodied something genuinely unsettling, a figure that seemed simultaneously modern yet primordial. The blank face tapped into deep-seated human anxieties about the uncanny, while the children in the images invoked our most primal fears about threats to the vulnerable. The business suit gave it a contemporary feel that suggested infiltration of normal society, yet the elongated limbs and supernatural abilities placed it firmly outside human experience. Perhaps most importantly, Victor Sergi left the story tantalizingly incomplete. There was just enough narrative to be disturbing, but the gaps invited others to fill in the blanks. And fill them in they did. Within days, other Something Awful users began expanding the mythos. They contributed their own doctored photographs and fragments of fictional accounts. The legend grew organically, fed by a collective creativity that blurred the lines between creators and audience. This collaborative myth-making is what folklorists call ostension, the process by which legend and reality begin to interact. Unlike traditional urban legends passed along as completed stories, Slender Man was participatory from its inception, inviting each new person to add their own elements to the narrative. Just 11 days after Slender Man's creation, 3 film students from Alabama, Troy Wagner, Joseph Delage, and Tim Sutton, launched a YouTube series called Marble Hornets. The premise involved a student filmmaker named Alex who abandoned a project after being stalked by a mysterious entity they called the Operator, clearly the Slender Man figure, though never explicitly named as such. The series was presented as found footage, showing clips from Alex's abandoned project, interspersed with newer footage from his friend Jay, who had discovered the tapes and was investigating the mystery. Marble Hornets pioneered the techniques that would become hallmarks of Slender Man media: visual distortion when the entity appeared, audio interference, cryptic symbols, and characters who gradually descended into paranoia and madness after encounters with the figure. The series also introduced the idea that merely investigating or becoming aware of Slender Man could draw his attention, a narrative device that heightened the immersive quality of the experience. The series became a viral sensation, eventually spanning 92 entries over 5 years and accumulating millions of views. Its success inspired numerous imitators and spin-offs, including Everyman Hybrid and Tribe 12, which further expanded the mythos while adding their own elements. Together, these series formed what fans called the Big Three, the core narratives that defined the early Slender Man phenomenon. What made Slender Man resonate so deeply was its ability to function as a modern boogeyman perfectly adapted to contemporary anxieties. Traditional monsters often represented fears relevant to their historical context. Vampires embodied fears of sexuality and foreign corruption during the Victorian era, while Atomic Age monsters like Godzilla personified nuclear anxieties. Slender Man, with his suit and tie, seemed to represent modern fears of faceless bureaucracy, surveillance, and institutional power. For younger audiences, Slender Man often symbolized dangers adults couldn't or wouldn't protect them from. His association with forests and playgrounds spoke to that transitional space between safety and danger, while his habit of stalking victims over time before they disappeared reflected anxieties about predators who groom their targets. The legend spread far beyond YouTube and the original forum. In 2012, independent developers released Slender: The 8 Pages, a first-person survival horror game where players had to collect pages while being hunted by the entity. Its simple mechanics and effective use of tension made it a tremendous success, particularly among YouTube gaming personalities whose reaction videos further popularized the character. Across internet forums, social media, and creative platforms like DeviantArt and Tumblr, Slender Man continued to evolve. Fanfiction, artwork, and various theories about his origins and motivations proliferated. Some connected him to existing folklore like the German Der Grossman or Scandinavian Toolman, connections that were entirely invented but added false historical depth to the mythology. Others suggested he was an interdimensional entity, a thought form brought to life by collective belief, or even some kind of primal evolutionary response to danger. By 2014, what began as a forum post had become a full-fledged cultural phenomenon. The legend had transcended its origins so thoroughly that many young people encountering it had no idea it was created on something awful in 2009. Like all effective folklore, Slender Man had achieved a kind of pseudo-anonymity where the creator became less important than the creation itself. For many, especially younger internet users, Slender Man had always existed, an entity lurking just at the edges of human perception, waiting. This blurring of fiction and reality would have profound consequences. On 31st May 2014, in Waukesha, Wisconsin, two 12-year-old girls, Morgan Geyser and Anissa Wire, lured their friend Peyton Leutner into the woods and stabbed her 19 times. When questioned by police, they claimed they had committed the act to please Slender Man. They believed that by murdering their friend, they would become proxies of the entity and be allowed to live in his mansion in the Nicolet National Forest. Miraculously, despite her grievous injuries, Leutner managed to crawl to a nearby road where a cyclist found her, and she survived. The case sent shockwaves through communities worldwide and placed internet culture under intense scrutiny. Parents, educators, and media outlets grappled with questions about the influence of online content on impressionable minds. The girls, diagnosed with mental health conditions and deemed unfit for regular criminal proceedings, were ultimately sentenced to long-term treatment in psychiatric facilities rather than prison. In 2021, Via was conditionally released, while in 2023, a judge ordered that Geyser, too, could be released under strict conditions. The tragedy represents an extreme and deeply disturbing case of what folklorists call ostension, when legend enters reality and influences behavior. It would be simplistic and incorrect to suggest that Slender Man caused the attack. Both girls had pre-existing mental health issues that affected their ability to distinguish fantasy from reality. Nevertheless, the case demonstrated the profound power that stories can have when they intersect with vulnerability. The incident prompted considerable soul-searching online. Eric Knudsen, Slender Man's creator, expressed being deeply saddened by the tragedy. The administrators of Creepypasta Wiki, though not directly connected to Slender Man's origins, issued a statement emphasizing that the character was fictional and that the site did not condone real-world violence. The case highlighted tensions between creative expression and responsibility, particularly in digital spaces where content creators have little control over how their work spreads or is interpreted. The Waukesha incident was not the only one connected to the Slender Man phenomenon. In the following months, several other attacks and self-harm incidents were attributed to the character's influence, though none as severe or clearly linked as the Wisconsin case. In Ohio, a mother claimed her 13-year-old daughter attacked her with a knife while wearing a white mask, allegedly influenced by Slender Man stories. In Florida, a teen reportedly set a fire in her family home after reading about proxies on creepypasta websites. These incidents spoke to deeper anxieties about digital culture and its influence. For many adults unfamiliar with online communities and their storytelling practices, Slender Man became emblematic of the perceived dangers of the internet, a frightening, inscrutable force corrupting youth. These fears, while understandable, often missed the nuance of how teenagers engage with horror fiction and the complex factors that contribute to violent behavior. The Waukesha incident brought mainstream attention to what had previously been a primarily internet-based phenomenon. Media coverage of the case frequently oversimplified the origins and nature of Slender Man, often portraying him as a singular character from a specific source rather than a collaborative creation. This coverage inadvertently contributed to the mythology, further blurring the lines between the fictional narrative and real events. In 2016, HBO released Beware the Slender Man, a documentary exploring the Wisconsin case and the broader cultural phenomenon. The film examined how folklore evolves in the internet age and raised questions about juvenile justice, mental health, and the power of belief. Unlike sensationalist news coverage, the documentary attempted to provide context for understanding both the Slender Man legend and the tragic violence it had become associated with. Despite, or perhaps because of, these troubling real-world connections, Slender Man continued to permeate popular culture. In 2018, Sony Pictures released Slender Man, a horror film loosely based on the character. The film was poorly received by critics and audiences alike, with many feeling it exploited the Waukesha tragedy. Out of respect for the victims and community, the film was not shown in theaters in Waukesha County. The Slender Man phenomenon exemplifies how modern mythology develops in the digital age. Unlike traditional folklore, which evolved gradually over generations through oral transmission, internet legends can emerge fully formed and spread globally within days. The participatory nature of online culture allows for rapid evolution as users build upon and modify the core narrative. This collaborative creativity produces a sense of collective ownership that traditional media rarely achieves. What began as Eric Knudsen's response to a forum challenge became a case study in contemporary folklore creation. Slender Man's rapid evolution from forum post to global phenomenon demonstrates the unique power of internet communities to generate and propagate new mythologies. The character's visual simplicity, a featureless face that could be projected upon, allowed for endless interpretation and personalization. The distributed nature of his mythology meant there was no canonical version to adhere to or rebel against. Each storyteller could adapt Slender Man to their own needs and interests. This flexibility allowed Slender Man to transcend his digital origins. He appeared in numerous video games beyond the original Slender, including Slender: The Arrival, and even as an Easter egg in mainstream titles like Minecraft. The character inspired music, artwork, cosplay, and multiple web series beyond the original Big Three. References to Slender Man appeared in television shows like Supernatural and Law & Order Special Victims Unit. He became shorthand for a particular type of contemporary horror, minimalist, psychological, and intimately connected to modern anxieties about technology and surveillance. Perhaps most significantly, Slender Man established a template for internet-native folklore that countless others have followed. Characters like The Rake, Smile Dog, and Jeff the Killer emerged from similar collaborative processes, though none achieved Slender Man's cultural penetration. These creations, collectively known as creepypasta, represent a digital evolution of traditional campfire tales and urban legends, short shareable stories designed to unsettle and intrigue. The line between Slender Man as a horror character and Slender Man as a folklore figure has always been blurry. Like traditional folkloric entities such as the Boogeyman or the Hookman, he serves as a cautionary figure, a manifestation of specific cultural fears. Yet unlike those characters, his creation is thoroughly documented, his evolution traceable through digital archives. He exists simultaneously as a known fiction and as something that has taken on a life of its own beyond any single creator's control. Today, interest in Slender Man has waned somewhat from its peak in the early to mid-2010s. The character has become part of internet history, an early example of digital mythology creation that newer generations of internet users study rather than actively expand upon. Yet his influence persists in the structures and practices of online storytelling, in the continuing popularity of analog horror series like The Backrooms, and in academic analyses of digital folklore. The Slender Man phenomenon forces us to reckon with fundamental questions about storytelling in the digital age. Who owns a collectively created myth? What responsibilities, if any, do creators have for how their work is interpreted? How do we navigate the blurred boundaries between fiction and reality when stories are told through media that deliberately obscure those boundaries? These questions have no simple answers, but they reflect the unique challenges of modern mythology. In an era where information spreads instantaneously and globally, where reality itself is increasingly mediated through screens and digital interfaces, the power of stories to shape perception and behavior takes on new dimensions. Slender Man stands as both warning and example, a demonstration of the internet's capacity to generate new forms of folklore, and a reminder that even digital myths can have real-world consequences. What began with simple manipulated images on an internet forum became a cultural touchstone, a legal case study, and a modern legend. Slender Man reminds us that humans have always created monsters to embody our fears, and that in the digital age, those creations can spread and evolve faster than ever before, slipping between the boundaries of fiction and reality like a tall, faceless figure moving between the trees. From a simple forum post to global phenomenon, the story of Slender Man demonstrates how the ancient human practice of collaborative myth-making continues in digital spaces. More than just a horror character, he represents a new chapter in how we create and share the stories that frighten us. A digital legend for a digital age, reminding us that, for better and for worse, the stories we tell shape the world we perceive. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, stay curious, stay safe,